According to psychologist Robert Sutton, disrespectful, demeaning, and downright mean spirited behavior is worse than ever. This behavior is especially true of online discourse, which researchers describe as the online disinhibition effect. Stanford psychology professor John Sula in 2004 said, the online disinhibition effect can cause people to act out in either a benign manner, wherein they overshare their personal information, or in a toxic manner, wherein they become abusive or threatening. "I am in my house, come and beat me" is a common saying online that alludes to the inaccessibility that emboldens even regular people to behave in less than civil ways online. Another factor responsible for this behavior, apart from anonymity and availability, is solipsistic introduction. A situation, according to Dr. Sula, where you don't have any physical cues associated with the person you're communicating with, and other person becomes just a voice in your head. As such, the people in your online conversations merely become characters in your imagination, formed by your own personal history and expectations. You might also hear his or her voice as your own, which makes you feel more comfortable with the other person and further lowers your inhibitions. As we have rules that guide our interactions in real life, unspoken rules need to be developed for our online interactions. Social media etiquette, or social mannerism simply put, means do's and don'ts for social media interactions. These etiquettes are also referred to as netiquettes. The term netiquette refers to all aspects of online communication, including email, instant messaging, social media, multiplayer gaming, and other forms of online communication. The main goal behind netiquette or mannerisms on social media is to treat others with respect and take care of intellectual property rights and associated implications. Personal information, images, or videos of anyone should not be shared without consent or mentioning credits where due. Except we seek to change such behaviors, it will pervade. Here are some social media netiquettes. When sending a DM, be polite and go straight to the point. When responding to posts, even if you disagree, be careful not to use condescending and insultive words. Take a 5-minute pause before you post any comments. Don't comment on topics that people tend to be passionate about. Don't respond to insults or hateful language. Don't say to people online what you won't have the audacity to say to them in person. Avoid excessive tagging of people. Ask before tagging people. Although it may seem inoffensive, tagging a friend or acquaintance on social media without their permission could in many ways cause problems for that person. Good social media etiquette means you should always request for permission before tagging anyone. Post only flattering pictures of other people. Apply the billboard test. Assume that everyone in the world can and will see everything you post. So if it's not billboard worthy, don't post it. Give credit where it's due. Don't post other people's photos or quotes without clear attribution. This means no screen grabs even if you have the best intentions. Instead, use a repost app to properly credit others with your own content. Think of the future you. Your taste will change, as will your sense of humor, but your photos will live on forever. Use caution when posting. Don't take screenshots of other people's private moments that they shared with you in confidence. Censor yourself. You might treat your Facebook or Twitter accounts as diaries. Don't share everything with your readers. Some things are meant to be kept private.
What we see and envy in other countries, we don't pay enough attention to how it is done. So for example, people are always talking about, we should tell African stories. I smile.
I'm one of those who says that.
I think that we should talk to ourselves first before we're even worried about what people are thinking about us. We overvalue the opinion of other people. We don't value ourselves. We don't value our people.
But isn't that why we should tell our own story?
To ourselves.
Yes, first.
Do you understand?
Yes.
So we won't be talking about telling African story because we didn't wake up this morning and think first and foremost I'm African. I think I'm Nigerian.
That's what I'm
You
saying.
understand? So in Nigeria,
Yes.
first and foremost, we need to talk to ourselves. How do we talk to ourselves? What do we say to ourselves?
What's
every
our
day.
reality?
So what does reality mean?
Reality.
And what lens are we looking at reality from?
Bankers and other financial sector stakeholders have urged President Bola Tinubu to withhold assents to the recently passed Finance Act Amendment Bill 2024. They are calling for the legislature and executive to reconsider the 70% foreign exchange windfall levy imposed on banks. Now, the National Assembly had increased the forex windfall levy from the originally proposed 50% to 70%, with retroactive application from January 1, 2023. This levy is intended to help finance the Renewed Hope infrastructure, education and healthcare project included in the President's supplementary budget proposal of 6.2 trillion naira. Now, President Tinubu has submitted this supplementary budget to the National Assembly, seeking to increase the 2024 national budget from 28.7 trillion naira to 34.9 trillion naira. The forex windfall levy on banks' revaluation gains during 2023 is a key part of the funding plan for this additional spending. However, the financial sector is now appealing to the President to reconsider the 70% levy rate, arguing that it is too high. They have urged the President to withhold assents to the amended Finance Act until a more suitable levy can be determined through further discussions between the government and industry. Also, the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation (NNPCL) has attributed the ongoing petrol scarcity in areas like Lagos and Abuja to a hitch in the discharge operations of vessels delivering fuel to filling stations in these regions, according to a statement from the NNPC spokesman Olufemi Shoneye on Saturday. Now, Shoneye explained that this hitch has disrupted normal operations and that the company is working with other stakeholders to resolve the issues and restore normalcy. We'll also bring you updates on the recent issues concerning the aviation sector on the show today. In a moment, this is Business Insights. I am Justin Nakadonye, your host. All right, before we get into the conversations, let's take this report. The Lagos State Governor, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, has emphasized that key reforms introduced and implemented by his administration were aimed at streamlining business development processes and building investors' confidence in the state's economy. The governor stated this while rolling out new investment focus on areas of opportunities before potential investors at the third edition of the Africa Social Impact Summit ACES 3.0. Details now.
The event brought together a diverse array of stakeholders, including investors, policymakers, trade organizations, financial executives, industry leaders, and business experts. Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu told the forum that the state is projecting a positive economic outlook driven by its growing population and the development of sustainable infrastructure to spur growth.
In the last 5 years, like we've said, we've seen our GDP grow by almost 50%, and so it is to make sure that we can continually, encourage even in very difficult times, our investors to be able to have the conversations of de-risking, what could be their issues, what could be their concerns, and being able to give them that comfort, and that enabling, environment and assurance that whatever it is that they invest as a government will continue to play our own role and will ensure that the investments are not only secured, but they can also be guaranteed of some minimum return would encourage and ensure that they stay around us.
The managing director of Sterling Bank, Abubakar Suleiman, said the summit meeting aimed to boost investor confidence in local markets and foster a business climate of greater trust.
The most critical thing for investing is that you have to be able to forecast what the future would look like. The moment you are no longer able to determine what the immediate future will look like, let alone the distant future, you are not going to invest. And that comes from one, policies, right? You've got to have policy environment where there's predictability, there's clarity. And I think Lagos has done a pretty decent job of providing this policy environment. The other thing that then comes with that is, even if there's policy, will it be consistently applied? Would it be applied to every investor in the same way? Again, very important that you can estimate that the policy affects everyone in the same way. But ultimately, it comes down to there has to be a level of respect between government and the investor community. Because in the absence of respect, the communication that would lead to the building of trust will not exist. So I like that Lagos State continues to convene, continues to come in for events like the Africa Social Impact Summit, and of course bring in all the critical stakeholders, their commissioners, the head of agencies, and we have brought in the investors leading to this conversation. So yes, without respect, there is no trust. Without trust, there is no investment.
What I'm taking home is the fact that you can trust Lagos for continuity. So if you're investing in Lagos, there's a continuity plan. So in a lot of climes you invest, and much later when the particular government is over and done, policy somersault, there's no continuity. But if you're investing in Lagos, you're convinced that the continuity plan is already in place to ensure that even after this government is over and done, the policies that are in place can support your businesses and allow your businesses thrive. That's my take home from today. Continuity, trust. Lagos is building trust in the hearts of investors, and of course communication. Lagos is trying as much as it can to communicate the opportunities it has to the world, to Africa, to West Africa, and then bringing people together to review these opportunities directly from critical stakeholders, in the governor's cabinet.
Investment opportunities in transportation, tourism, health insurance, and waterways, affirming the state's government's commitment to advancing ambitious development plans for these key sectors.
All right, welcome back from that report as we look at the windfall tax conundrum, how we can navigate the fiscal impact on Nigerian banks. And I have international finance and economic analyst Mukhtar Mohammed joining me in this conversation. Thanks for joining me, Mukhtar. Good morning to you. Mukhtar, can you hear us? We can hear you. All right, let's take a quick break and see if we can reconnect with Mukhtar. Mukhtar, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Okay, I couldn't hear you at the point. Okay, so let's talk about the windfall tax. There's been so much ado about it since last week, since this Finance Act bill was actually amended and all of that. First of all, let us just get a perspective, an overview concerning the windfall tax. And
you also have to put in profit, but we need to get a gain because we were just gaining based on the banking sector. So, and this is the key driver of the Nigerian economy. So I think the Tinubu administration in terms of policy has been one of the worst policy implementation. Even when some policy looks good, their implementation has been very, very appalling. So I think they should wake up and look at this Financial Act back again and then sit down with relevant stakeholders and discuss the matter, because as it stands, so it could be a legal tissue. It's really a very dicey situation in the financial sector at a time like this where the banks are looking for funds to recapitalize, at a time like this where the government also say foreign investors to come in. So we have seen two very critical issues that will impact the coming of foreign investors to Nigeria. One, this current tax policy of the government, and secondly, the war between the government and Dangote Refinery. This does not encourage investors. This is a government that pride themselves traveling out to the shore of this country to get investors. So they need to look back at their policies, sit down, because the only golden fish that we have up to this moment still remain the banking sector because of their spread around Africa and also globally. they still remain one of Nigerian finest and in terms of global representative of what our economy will look like going forward. Still remain the banks, and I think the president should have a rethink on this policy on the bank, because it's going to be counterproductive, especially now that you want the bank to recapitalize. Remember that recapitalization in itself shouldn't be an issue for the banks. You told them to go and look for fresh funding, because the bank shareholders' funds have run into trillion. And so one part of these shareholders' funds are some of these FS schemes. So actually, that what it means is that the government have always had this idea. That's why the CBN told them to look for a new fund. And that is not being sincere with your stakeholder, and that is dangerous for the economy.
All right, so in all of this, that the federal government, as it is just looking for various ways, to just get money from the system. But what can the banks really do? Because from what I hear, the punishment for non-compliance with the act would be a further liability of 10% of the tax withheld or not remitted per annum, and interest at the prevailing Central Bank of Nigeria minimum rediscount rate, and imprisonment. Because if you look at it right now, like you said, the energy sector also got some sort of a windfall that they're not being asked to pay tax. So why this, fixation on banks? Is it how it's done, as in globally, as in global standard? Because I hear there's something like in the UK, 25% energy profits levy, or how does it really work?
Well, if you have it in the UK, they didn't just wake up one day after they submitted the report to do that. It must have been in their law. Windfall.
Mokhtar, are you still there? All right, we seem to have a bit of disconnect from Mokhtar. We'll try and reconnect with him, because the nation's National Assembly is not alone in legislating for a windfall tax or a sole tax on businesses, or also industries that have benefited from certain economic conditions, to redistribute the excess profit and gains from those businesses and industries to fund social or development projects. The Italian windfall tax for banks at 40% for FY 2023 resulted from a government rate hike, which triggered higher net interest margins and yielded record profits for banks. Now, the windfall tax was implemented as the cost of loans soared, while lenders held off paying more on deposits. I'll take a quick break and see if I can reconnect with Mokhtar in a moment. Stay with me.
I will take you through this amazingness today.
Welcome to Plus Trending. I am Buki November, your host, saying thank you for joining us on today's episode.
Welcome back. It's tea time on Plus TV Africa.
Practice makes perfect. I'm not perfect yet, but I'm a lot better than I used to be.
He's a king. He's entitled to marry 100 if he wants to.
insight on Plus TV Africa. I still have Mukhtar Mohammed joining me right now over the phone. Mukhtar, just before we left off, we're talking about how it works globally, and we're citing the instance with the UK, and you were explaining to us.
Yes, what I'm saying is that, yes, it happened in other countries. Nobody is saying it doesn't happen, but it's not that they, when they say at the middle of the match, then you change the rule. Windfalls are things that are issued in some of these constitutions of this country and also in their tax policies. So it's not something that just comes out of the blue because the government need money, like what we are experiencing here in Nigeria. Now, every talk is about the government need money, and that's why they are doing that. And again, like I said, you've already taxed them by about 30% income tax. You've also now asking for 70%. So when you do that, that is almost that is multiple taxation times 2. So I think what the government needs to do is to come out clear in what they want to do. Maybe have a stakeholder meeting with the banks and see how the bank can also help in growing the economy. Because the situation whereby you are just sitting at the bank, like you said in your report, we still have the oil and gas sector also that benefited from this year of reform. But again, your reform is good. What of those sectors that didn't benefit from your reform, that are busy declaring losses, and these sectors are the key employers of Nigeria? You're talking Nigerians, talking about the informal sector, how much losses they've incurred. Some of these companies are leaving Nigeria because of those losses. You are not even looking at that. You're just looking at one side of the device, saying that your policy have impacted positively on the side, but you have largely impacted negatively on the other side, and also not just the companies, even Nigerians as individuals. This your policy have impacted negatively on them. So I think they need to come out clear, and in coming out clear, they need to do a lot of soul searching and have to meet with the banks to come up with an amicable solution of this. But I don't think like it's never in our law. And again, I think it's something that the government needs to shave and then begin to think whether you want to put it in your law going forward.
All right, let's move away from the windfall tax and see if we can talk about the fuel scarcity and the airlines issue right now. First of all, the fuel scarcity. Since Friday, Saturday, especially in Lagos and Abuja, the residents and commuters, motorists have been buying fuel at over 800. Some are buying as much as 1,000, 1,100, even at the parallel market rate. And the NNPCL has come out to say that it was due to a hitch in their vessel operations and all that. Why are we still having this issue of fuel scarcity, Mukhtar?
Because we are not sincere. The NNPC will keep telling you. There's never been a time that the NNPC have not given us excuse. And this is still what we keep saying, that because we rely so much on the NNPC, they are the sole importer of petroleum product into this country. And that is why a lot of people like us don't understand why the government is not supporting Dangote to end this menace and suffering of Nigerians. For me, I think it's a deliberate plot to drag us back, especially by NNPC, because they've always have excuse. There's never been a time that the fuel scarcity have come out and NNPC have owned up to their fault. It's something you have to plan before time. You know what the challenges are. You know what the challenges will be. So I think for me, it's just same excuse, because the NNPC is just not upping its game. And I think the management of the NNPC in developed countries should have been told to resign at this point in time, because this NNPC have promised us for local consumption, and up to this moment we have not gotten anything from them, especially the Port Harcourt refinery. The last time I heard the group managing director almost taking an oath on national television saying, this time I'm not lying. It will come to pass. So has it been lying thus far? So there's a lot of things that we need to recheck ourselves and tell ourselves the truth. As it stands now, this government is not taking the bull by the horn. And I think it's very, very very annoying for people like us that think that it's a government that would drive economic policy and be able to take the bull by the horn.
All right. Finally, let's look at another mode of transportation away from road. Let's talk aviation, air transport, and reports reaching us indicates that NAMA is about hiking the airline navigation services by 800%. At the time, right now, when Nigerians couldn't have been more pressured by issues, inflation, hunger, even those that can still fly, they are set to pay almost ×8 what they are paying. What is really going on, Mukhtar?
Well, you have to ask the government. I told you that this government is just interested in revenue. Yeah, if you look at what the aviation sector is saying, they've been the lowest. The last time they did this was like in 2014. They said that they are supposed to have reviewed based on economic challenges, which I agree with them. But again, the mode of operandi, if you look at 2014 up to now, the economy has been struggling. So why have you not been increasing this gradual increment and just hitting 800%? Just we're seeing the same thing in the power sector, where instead of doing a gradual increment like what other developed countries or even developing economies are doing, you just see the case of transportations are not there yet, because of if you are going from Lagos to Abuja, you put your heart will be in your hand because of the insecurity, kidnapping. So you've not even created an avenue for whereby you have a choice to say, you know what, this is too expensive, like in developed nations, then I will have to go by road, and the roads are not good, and then you have insecurity. So government seems to just look at revenue. And like I said, if you stay this long, yes, it's one of, because the exchange rate at 2015, 2014 is not the same thing. Aviation is forex driven. I agree totally with it, but I think it should be done gradually with a human face.
Right.
A sector that is already struggling in terms of effects for maintenance. We've seen that in a lot of airlines incidents that have happened. These are due to maintenance. So now you are now putting this burden on them. That means you are putting the life of most Nigerians at risk in flying. So I think the government needs to look at second thought. In as much as I agree that levels may have to increase, but I don't think it should be done at a go at 800%.
All right. Thank you so much, Mukhtar Mohammed, for your useful insight as always on the program. We do appreciate them. All right, that's the size of the show for today. I must say a very big thank you to all of you who have sat back to watch. My name is Justin Akadonye. We'll return again same time next time. Bye for now.
know it's Tuesday. Weekends are for entertainment, Tuesdays for sports business. And today we have a loaded package for you. In the studio with me is Mr. Victor Unduka Uba. Yeah, he's the Deputy Managing Director of AfriInvest West Africa. Now we're going to learn from him two things. One, we're going to find out from his wealth of experience in investment banking what we need to do in the Nigerian sports industry to attract the sort of investments we need to grow the sports industry in Nigeria. And then also we're going to be talking to him about his company's role in sports in Nigeria. They already have gotten into the, into the industry in basically getting their hands dirty to try and get the sports industry where it should get to the lofty place it should get to, as shirt sponsors of Nigeria champions Enugu Rangers. Now, sports is big business. We can't say that enough on this program. And what you're going to be hearing today, if you are a sports investor or a sports entrepreneur, is what you need to do to ensure that you maximize your investments in the industry. But before we get started, I have Mr. Unduka in the studio, but before we get started, we're going to take a very short break. And 1 minute no more, keep the dial on Plus TV Africa. When we return, the business begins.
It is engagement we need to have.
Those who suffer miscarriages are never taken into account.
Members of the National Assembly are also influence peddlers.
You are sitting on Nigerians' money.
From the Babin, I pay my rent. On the Babin, I send my children to school.
A consultative engagement.
No any tangible notification before they ban us.
It's one thing for people to be at your back and the heat of the moment, and another thing for them to still be with you when push comes to shove.
Welcome back to the program Sports Business with Orufo Ezaga. We're reaching you from Plus TV Africa live from our studios in Lagos. Today we're going to be talking sports investment, and in the studio with me is Mr. Unduka Uba, Victor Unduka Uba, who is the Deputy Managing Director of AfriInvest West Africa Limited. Hello, Victor. You're welcome to the program.
Hi, good afternoon, Urufo. Thank you for having me.
Okay. It's you I should be thanking. Because it's you. We want to drill your brain and get as much as we can from you this afternoon. All right? So look, do you get a sense that the sports industry in Nigeria is beginning to maybe grow in a different direction, the right direction?
Well, when you say sports, generally, I think it goes beyond. There are several facets to it.
Okay.
Perhaps the response would be there are green shoots in several areas.
Okay.
I think basketball, we've seen some exciting things happening there with FIBA, and some of the talent that the Basketball Federation is able to attract now to play for Nigeria. Especially diaspora Nigerians who are exposed to better facilities and training in the US. So that's positive. The Nigerian football is also beginning to see some investments by private sector improvements, and there are green shoots there as well.
I think that interests me personally. It is the fact that the private sector is beginning to look into the industry. It's still sort of passive attention, so to speak, but we're getting something. An investment banking firm is involved in the league. You guys are involved in some way in the league as well. And so I imagine that the sports sector or sports entrepreneurs should now be looking and saying, okay, so maybe we have the attention of the investment community. Would I be right in saying that?
Well, yes and no. So to some degree, whatever attention the community is getting today is perhaps born more out of CSR than out of a direct business investment. However, I think that is only a stepping stone towards making it a full-blown commercial enterprise. But as it may, I think just getting involved as well, even if it's at the CSR level, because you're trying to, or corporates are trying to see how they can impact society and community, and get young people actively engaged in some productive venture. That itself begins to open their eyes into other areas where they can intervene, either through funding or through introducing structure and governance or process, as it were, to improve the odds of success overall, both for participants, for stakeholders, and even the youth themselves.
Okay, sports is an industry that has been prioritized by the more progressive economies of our world, right? And this is for decades, right? So clearly there's something happening in that space. We saw China try to muscle in. Now it's Saudi Arabia that's muscling in. What are these guys seeing that we're not seeing? Because, for instance, some searches will tell you that 2080, they have gone 44 years ahead now. Why are we still in 1980? What? Because I know we can blame the government, we can blame the federations, but innovation should say that in the private sector, people should look at this and say, where is the opportunity? It looks like there's some opportunities. Do you get a sense that the investment community even thinks that there's an opportunity, or they know that there's an opportunity, but they don't feel the environment is right for it?
That's a very loaded question. Well, I will attempt to answer. I think, when we look at some of what has happened in the developed world, like you mentioned, you cited EU, you cited the US. Those economies are advanced for a reason. We often talk about, for example, rule of law. That is one almost invisible element to the business environment that helps shape investments. If you have a legal system where whenever there are disputes, you can't categorically make a judgment call as to timelines for resolution, then you find that it doesn't lend itself to investments, and that's part of the challenge we have in Africa. Our legal systems are, they run on almost manual, analog, if at all technology. Most times it's very manual, paper-based processes that impinge on disputes. And with sports particularly, you can't afford to have, for example, let's say a football player has a contract dispute with his club. How does he seek redress? Does he go to the courts? How long would it take? If he has to go through the entire legal system, can he afford the service of a lawyer? So those sort of things impact on sports generally. But I think just sort of coming back to the question, which is where we are today seems to be 44 years, 45 years behind where US was this time then. I think their own path to sports development was basically hinged on collegiate or school sports. So whether it is, the very popular American football, which is a variant of rugby, or it's basketball, or it's baseball, starting kids early and having huge local community following around those activities meant that they could monetize at that local level. And when you look at the economics and the size and contribution of collegiate sports, it's actually bigger than professional sports in the US. And the reason is simple. First of all, the US is a large country that is wealthy on average when you look at per capita income, per capita GDP. So that helps in the sense that when you have Nigerians, for example, who emigrate to the US and they settle in, and their kids, because again, there's something about the African build that makes them sort of naturally amenable to sports, and they get involved in active sports early. What you find is that at the very low levels, in the community levels, in the counties, you find college sports, and there's a proper structure to how those games happen, you know, and progressively there's local TV coverage, there's support from local companies who sponsor some of those local community, you know, championships and competitions, whether it's swimming, you know, you name it, ice skating. So all of that local investment by local corporates into local community sports is what builds the ecosystem for talent pipeline through the system or through the ranks. And ultimately, by the time you're then getting towards, you know, the second half, you know, high school, towards the end and looking at college, then there are the odds that some people can have a free ride through college on the back of sports or whatever it is they can do. You know, we are very far from that today. If anything, a lot of our schools, secondary schools, don't even have playing fields. You know, and it's one of those things where the argument can't be made against the private sector, because for whatever reasons, we've sort of abdicated the responsibility of the public sector, in this case government, with education to the private sector. So you have more private schools where the resources are not even there to invest in the right infrastructure, so they don't have playgrounds or sports grounds or fields, as it were. And so people buy property and just convert it into schools, and all of that dovetails.
Yeah, but we still have, okay, so I was going to say we still had schools with these fields, right? But then there's really, I think what we have lost is the culture of sports as being fundamental to a well-rounded education.
Right.
As well as to our civilization, as a matter of fact. Yeah. So I don't see that we pay these days. Maybe we would rather go for is it parties or vigils and stuff like that. People don't, and so as a result, we miss all of those values that sports. And we can see today, brother and the sister, they were with their father. It was a swimming competition, and this boy of 10 was already planning and saying, you know what, I want to swim the last lap. Let this guy swim the first lap. This one is faster. This one is slower. Problem-solving skills, collaboration. You know, they need to understand why there are rules and why you should follow the rules and stuff like that. These are things missing from our society. So now we have ended up with all of the problems we have today that I feel sports can mitigate, you know, clearly. But for the business sector, I'm not going to let you off the hook like that. Do you get it? If we want the public sector to invest in sports, wouldn't it help if the private sector, you know, becomes like the catalyst? So you see the opportunity. You see that guys like you are making a lot of money from these things in other countries. Why should you be exonerated?
So it's not a straight and simple narrative, as you've suggested. Businesses exist for one reason, to deliver shared value.
Yeah.
Now, what is shared value? As a member of a society, a business is there to solve a problem first, and hoping that in solving that problem, it gets the economic returns to make it a going concern and sustainably grow. It creates jobs, it pays taxes, which should then help, and people got to where they believe that there's going to be a return of that capital, so that they can continue to then deploy capital.
Yeah.
Now, when I started, I talked about how it's early days, and what we're seeing is corporates looking at CSR as the channel to support sports. And why? Because in communities today, you have youth restiveness, you have rising cases of drug use, and what country do we want to build?
Absolutely.
And the point you make about, you know, holistic education going beyond just rote learning in the classroom and incorporating sports is something that I'm aware is top of mind amongst many young professionals like myself. Recently, I was talking to a friend who is the CEO of a tower company, a telecom tower company, and one of his personal projects is essentially investing in schools, important for life. You know, being able to develop the commitment, understand what it means to take a path of I will use maybe not self-abnegation, but just understanding what it means to sacrifice, certain pleasures, sleeping, waking up so much earlier than maybe your friends, forgoing certain kinds of meals and diets just so you maintain a certain, muscle to mass to bone, ratio, and working out, exercising, just to keep your body weight in check and to ensure that your muscles are toned. So there's a lot of sacrifice that goes into it. And it teaches people, and you talked about all the other things around teamwork, collaboration, understanding discipline, understanding rules and implementing by it, understanding what it means to fail at an attempt and knowing that, look, it's not the end of the world. You can always try again, and the fact that I participated itself is a win, and all of that. So like I said, it's very early days. There's so much more we can do, and I believe that, look, as a community, so when you look at companies and corporates and businesses like ourselves, so we live in the community, we live in society, and we ask ourselves, what else can we do? Sports, in many cases, requires investments in infrastructure. If it's team sports, for example, you must have befitting infrastructure that look from grounds to playing courts to pitches. Not just the final pitches, but some training materials. If you are into swimming, you must have a swimming pool at a certain standard, so that you're not, quote unquote, shooting yourself in the foot when you then show up at international tournaments and you are not prepared because you are not training with the right, in the right environment, and all of that. So those investments can start. I know I can use an example. My kids, I have 2 children. My daughter is older than my son, but my son is a much better swimmer than she is. She teases him and calls him a fish. And he was the best swimmer in the school. He got an award for it, and he just graduated. But I didn't have that chance growing up because my parents did not have, they were middle class, quote unquote, but I didn't have access to a swimming pool. But I always thought I could learn this thing. And the first chance I had as an adult, young, employee, I went and taught myself how to swim. But clearly, I was already in my late 20s. There's no future for me in swimming as a sport. Now, if my kids belong to a swimming club, there's odds are there are competitions that can happen both locally and internationally, which if I can afford it, I might then decide to, commit that investment into my son. He also plays football. I'm sporty. I played football in school. Of course, I did high jump, I did long jump. So it's naturally that my mom was also an athlete. So I understand where the genetics play, and he's very sporty. I have now decided, there's a neighbor of mine whose son has enrolled in a football academy here in Lagos, and he goes with him sometimes. And one day the coach came to me to say, look, at the other boy's birthday, his friend's birthday, your son is very good at this football thing. You should really consider enrolling him. And I think to myself, okay, well, now I know that if the talent is there, I might as well support him, because potentially if he goes to Europe, I can become a very rich man and retire early. Now, but truth is, if he was to play professionally all his life in Nigeria, are the odds of success as great? They are not. And truth be told, when you look at the numbers, at the end of the day, it's a very, very limited opportunity, window. How many people make it to elite levels and become phenomenally successful at those levels, barring injuries and all that? So it's one reason why education has to be blended with sports, so that, look, if the sports thing doesn't really work out, the kids are armed with life skills that they can then apply into different careers and make a success. So there's so much to be said, but let me rest here.
Yeah. But so I'll take you back to something you said, and it's about the economy.
Yes.
Do we have the economy to run sports? I hear people all ask me that all the time. Do you have an economy to run sports? Maybe you're in a better place to explain this. When they say 1% of your GDP can come from sports, it means you don't have to have an EPL, or you don't have to have a British economy to create 1%
yes.
in your economy. Yeah. So that's number one. Number two, Nigerians say there's no money, and you know what I think? Money,
okay,
but there are no products. Yeah. So I'll give you an example. The English Premier League has been the rave in Nigeria for the past 20 years plus, right? As of the last time that I checked, the current deal for the English Premier League broadcasting rights is £168 million for sub-Saharan Africa. 168 million pounds. Yeah, I don't want to convert to naira because I don't want to lose my cool. Yeah. Okay, so 168 million pounds was for sub-Saharan Africa. As of 2009 and 2010, HITV was paying $40 million. That's what mad jobs for everyone, quality jobs. So I think the challenge, mad jobs for everyone, quality jobs. So I think the challenge has to then be, if we have 100 million, I've not talked about tourism, EPL tourism. I've not talked about thousands of Nigerians, I'm sure, who are season ticket holders of their English clubs, right? So it's a lot of money that we sink into the EPL. And if you ask me, it's part of the reasons why today we're grappling with an economy that's on life support. If every time we spend the little we have on other...
But there are certain... some of the data points are skewed. And it's important to recognize the skew.
Okay, please.
So when we say the EPL, that's one product. Of course, there is the Spanish La Liga, which is also quite popular here. There is the Italian Serie A. Maybe as it used to be. The Champions League is huge. Now, all of that TV following and the rights behind it is typically purchased by broadcasters or people affiliated to broadcast who want to make a buck on the back of that, given the huge following this products command, because they're their products. That said, if I look at the proportion or the percentage of Nigerians who have sufficient liquidity as to be able to go pay season tickets for a club in the UK, maybe Chelsea or whatever, I'm not sure that if I aggregate all of those individuals, there are up to 10,000 of them in Nigeria, right? So when we then talk about creating local products as an alternative to the EPL, the question is, what exactly are we creating? Is it a product for Nigerians to consume? Or are we creating a product that becomes an export product? My argument when I talk with friends is, as a country, yes, there's always the talk about the 200 plus million Nigerians being a market. I don't think we're a market. The predominant share of Nigeria's population is either poor, I don't want to use the word extremely poor, but when we talk about extreme poverty, there's at least 130 million Nigerians who are extremely poor, less than $1.90, $1.90. So that's not the guy who is going to pay you money to go watch a football game. Clearly, at that level is subsistence. He just needs to eat, he needs shelter, and the basics, maybe a roof over his head. Football becomes a luxury, or sport becomes a luxury, whether it's football or whatever, basketball. Now, if we're going to create a product, we've got to think about who are we creating the product for, and can they pay? The Nigerian League, for example, where we have become a stakeholder in a sense by sponsoring the eventual league winners for the 2023-24 league season, Enugu Rangers.
Congrats, by the way.
Thank you. It was a decision we took because we started looking at it from a sort of social / corporate social responsibility type lens. And it was from that perspective we sort of went into it to look, what can we do to improve and help ameliorate what was a sort of dire youth situation in the Southeast, given the issues with insecurity and all of that and the restiveness. And that for us was the way. And of course, from shared sponsorship, we're now talking about other areas of collaboration to see how we can support that club to become a more professionally run, including improving the grounds. So the stadium, we're talking about, look, what would it take to upgrade these facilities to become at least certified for CAF competitions in Africa? So that's on the way. What about your feeder teams? Are there academies affiliated to Rangers? Are there other clubs at the lower tiers that potentially could act as feeder clubs? What is the exchange? How do you provide that support so that they become sustainable and run efficiently? So those are the conversations that are already ongoing. And yes, sometimes I look at the big picture and I say, look, I can't solve all the big problems at time. So pick one area and get in there and get involved and start doing what you can in your little corner. hopefully you inspire a few others. And I talked about a few companies that have become active, especially in the football area, sponsoring certain teams who are, you know, either in the NFL, NPFL, or in the NNL. Now you have some corporates sponsoring that. In some cases, one company is sponsoring 2 different clubs. So we're beginning to see investments like that, because it's an investment, maybe not necessarily for profit, but as a socially responsible institution. We're seeing some of that. But ultimately, what would be the product? The product has to be what is showcased. In this case, football has to be the league. The integrity of league is important. You know, what is it like, you know, on match days? Do you have decent TV coverage? Is the pitch nice? Does it look appealing? When it shows up on TV, for example, do you see dust each time players run around and try and kick the ball? Or, you know, which is all of that, you know, it all comes together. You know, the aesthetics has to work. The quality of the football has to work. So the coaching and the quality of coaching, the players, they, you know, some of the basics, can they trap the ball? Can they put the ball on their chest? You know, how technical are they? In terms of gifting, you know, with their head, with both feet, you know, so a lot of those things. So it's a holistic conversation. I would pose it that if we're to try and make sports a product, then we have to look at ways of exporting that product so that we're earning FX and not just hoping on the local market that is beset by so many other economic issues.
Oh, okay, very well spoken. You know, there's a reason I like you guys. You see, and let me tell you what that reason is. Look, you're a Nigerian corporate, right? And you're waiting for the NPFL to become PA grade before you get behind it. That's not the way it works. If you want our sports to be at the European levels or you know, competitive when compared to the best products in the world, you've got to get in now, contribute your bit, and then seek the changes that you wish to see happen in the league, like my gentleman friend here is doing at Afri Invest. All right. So we're going to go on a short break, about a minute or thereabouts. Keep the dial on Plus TV Africa. We're reaching you live from our stations in Lagos. When we return, the business continues. Welcome back to the program Sports Business with Orufuo Ezaga. We're reaching you live from Sport Plus TV Africa and from our studios in Lagos, Nigeria. We've been talking about sports investments, and in the studio with me has been Mr. Victor Nduka Uba. He's the Deputy Managing Director, Afri Invest West Africa. They are not just investment bankers, they are also investors in the Nigerian sports, in the Nigerian local sports space. All right. So, Victor, we're talking about whether there was a market for sports in Nigeria. Is there a market? And you were talking about if you need to build a sports product, you've got to think about exporting that sports product. Yeah. But then, has anybody tried, for instance, to build that? Have you had a plan come to you to say, you know, over the next 5-10 years, this is how we want to build this product? Because first, you have to capture the local market. Internationally, all sports businesses, all sports properties have a local foundation. If, for instance, you're watching the EPL and there are 10 people in the stadium, you watch it and you think, what am I watching? Yeah. If you're watching the NBA and there are no takers, same problem. So you've got to first of all win the local market. And then people can watch and say, whatever these 50,000 people in the stadium are enjoying, I want a part of that. That's number one. Number two is the fact that you talked about what population of Nigerians have money to invest in, say, maybe going to a stadium and stuff like that. I'll tell you something. If you look at the 20 teams in the MPFL last season, and you looked at the stadium capacity that they had, you'd find that to fill all of the stadiums one match weekend, right? As a matter of fact, not so. To fill all of the stadiums, you need 349,000 Nigerians, 349,000. But here, guess what? That's all 20 stadiums. But every match day, one team goes to play away. So effectively what you have to do is fill 10 stadiums.
Mm-hmm.
And all you have to do is find 174,500 Nigerians who are ready to get into the stadium and pay just an average of 2,000 naira. You know, some people will pay 500. When I went to watch matches last season, people were paying 25,000 naira to watch sports in Lagos. Some were paying 5,000. Do you understand? Me, I paid to myself. Do you understand? You know, so I know that interest is building. People are beginning to pay. For the Oriental Derby, they paid between 500 naira and 10,000 naira. Some people got in there. You know, you have to also understand the culture of the people. There's one big guy that comes in and buys 20 tickets or 50 tickets for people. So I still think that there's money, people can watch, but whatever you want to do, whatever your global ambitions are, you've got to first of all capture the domestic markets, right? Once you do that, we are Nigeria. There's a slide I would like to put up in the course of this, which will tell you that, look, Nigeria, because of Nigeria, all you have to do is look at the music industry or the movie industry and see, you know, how they have benefited from the power of the Nigerian brand. If you're a Ghanaian, you're singing your Sarkodie, your music is probably nice, but Chris Brown will collaborate with Wizkid, and the next day 20 million people are following him. You know, so there's a certain attraction to Nigerian music because of that as well. You know what I mean? So we have the dynamics right. I think we have the necessary dynamics. The point is, do we have the innovation and the heart to make this thing, to build this thing? Because to build them takes time. Do we have the heart to wait out? Do we have the patient capital we need to do that?
So it's an interesting question, you know, no doubt, and I like the parallels you drew with, you know, music or movies, entertainment industry largely, and you know, not to pour water on that example. You would agree with me that while a local following is important, the real business of music or entertainment, you know, came with exports.
Without a doubt.
Right.
Completely.
So if we talk about Nigerian Football League, Nigerian Professional Football League, or Nigerian football generally, as an example now, discussing sports, or as a case study, I don't think Nigerian teams lack for following. Right, you know, if Kano Pillars has a match in Kano, it's usually a lockdown.
The North is
you know, if Enyimba has a match in Aba, it's on lockdown. If Rangers has a match in Enugu, it's on lockdown. Sporting Lagos, which was even only newly promoted last season, began to even develop a cult following amongst young professionals who wanted a different experience on the weekends. And like you said, people pay 10, 15, 20, 25K to go sit in the box to watch a game with family. You know, so it's about the experience. And depending on the market where you are, you will be able to get some of that product sold to some consumers. So the following is there. Now, to make Nigerian football, for example, a thriving multinational business, the product has to be such that everybody wants to be part of it. Players from around the continent want to play in the country. The best coaches around will want to coach in that league. You know, if you're a sports scientist, you're a medical professional within sports, you know, a physio, a surgeon, you want to be part of that ecosystem. You know, if then you're a brand, you recognize the power of that product, and then you want it for mileage. You know, so it is. I think that the journey has begun. You know, I've cited examples. There's Wendy's, there's you know, Bet King, or Bet Nigeria, rather, who, you know, and the people behind it, you know, sponsoring 2 different teams. You've got you know, Fola and his people in Sporting Lagos, although unfortunately they are relegated. But I believe very strongly that it's not a, so that business, for example, was or the whole idea behind Sporting Lagos was a couple of young men who had made money from tech and decided, look, we have to also find a way to enable something in the community and give back. And that was their way of doing it. And they're not here, they're not playing games. I think they lost the stadium they had, the 5,000-seater, to the whole, you know, to the Lekki Coastal Road. But they're not deterred, because I've spoken with them and I said, look, you know what, they've taken it on the chin and they're prepared to continue. So,
I wasn't aware of that.
So, see, when you talk about those investments, you know, the macro always tells. Now, they could have decided, you know what, we're done. We've lost that investment. Let's go and face our business. But they're still committed. So you'll find that there is that. It's a long game, right? And you have to keep at it. Ultimately, we can talk about the local following and getting people to pay tickets. But at the end of the day, and football, as we know, when we look at some of the clubs that we like to follow in Europe, they prepare accounts, they give you their revenue sources, there are at least 3, potentially 4 of them. Gate tickets is one, and in many cases it's actually the least of the lot. More money from TV, depending on competitions they play, and then there's merchandising, right? So if you ask who is the star player in the local league, in a particular team, does he have a commercial appeal that people willing to go pay to buy his jersey? What is the framework for distributing jerseys, you know, and ensuring authenticity? Would they be plagiarized, or, you know, would there be counterfeiting in that market? You know, would the clubs derive the revenue? You know, and then there's all of the other things around, you know, branding. So branding local stadium, you know, branding local events, you know, in the name of the stadium and things like that. So those are things that contribute to the revenues. For Nigeria, there's some TV money coming through, but it's not a lot. The MPFL has put some money down. League winner gets, I think it was 100 million last year. Now it's going to 150. It's, you know, sorry, 150 is grow, but we need the economy to also grow to the point where those businesses and opportunities become real opportunities. You know, so it's a long game. It's work in progress. As long as the commitment is there, you know, and people don't give up, then we will just have to keep pushing and, you know, going at it.
Well, I like what you say about the fact that the journey has begun.
Yes.
Right. Before now, it's been stop, start. I'm hoping that with the entrance of your competitor, GTI Asset Management and Trust, into the space, the football space, maybe they can take this thing like that. But the point is, I think that ultimately, what needs to be done, what we need to do, is to sit down and figure out whether if we get a product and develop it in the manner that we should, in a manner that makes it look good. It doesn't have to be football. Everybody's trying to do it. It can be a street soccer event. You know, you go there, you film it to maybe 2,000 people want to watch it. They're prepared to pay 500. You put it on the Propel Sports Africa platform, and you have a business. You know what I mean? So sometimes I don't think we need to overthink this thing and feel like we have to develop an NBA grade product or an NFL or an EPL or a La Liga. No. The little things that we do here, that because if you go to golf or you go to swimming or you go to tennis in Nigeria, the people in those communities enjoy the tennis that they play, enjoy the golf that they play, and they have their own stars, they have their own stories to tell. All we need to do, as I tell to them all of the time, is take these stories from your community and plant it where the rest of Nigerians can see it, and maybe they get as excited as you and they want to pay a dime or two to be part of that experience. All right? But let me ask about your partnership with Rangers, because I think that's very important. You know, it's something that you guys are doing that made me start to chase you. The other because on this program, it's very important. Our business, our focus, is to get people to see the value in sports and to then invest in sports, because, like you have said, it then cleans up society in a way that makes our civilization a progressive one.
Yeah.
All right. So the Rangers experience, how's it going, and what are you looking forward to in the new season?
Right. So thanks.
Sorry, before you answer that,
right.
Let me just. Are you going to take credit for the championship win, or?
Well, we have to. It will be remiss of us not to take the credit. But of course, the credit goes to the team. Because at the end of the day, the players did the business over 38 games, right? And that's thing, to be precise. With Rangers, unfortunately, at the time we really couldn't close. We couldn't get to sign the dotted lines and to proceed with that partnership. And then down back last year, Amobi had returned from Switzerland, where he had gone to do a FIFA Master, and said, look, he reached out to us. I know you guys, because he was at the club at the time, we're having those conversations, and said, look, are you guys still open to this idea? I have a plan I want to execute. And then he came and made a presentation to the management team at one of our retreats, and we said, okay, you know what, let's dip our toe in the water and support you. And so we took the dive. Now, it wasn't, we could have made the decision quickly because we had been thinking about it in the past, right? So it was easy to make that call. And of course, in partnering, the objective wasn't really at the time anything big or trying to say, look, I'm trying to, this is about marketing and pushing our brand out there. It was really around how can we support what is a fan favorite in a community that is challenged, to see how we can pull communities together, pull youth together, and let them coalesce around something that they all love and enjoy, which is football, make it more appealing. Of course, part of that sponsorship money goes towards, for example, getting the team to match their venues on time in a bit more comfort than they're used to, and supporting them generally around the things they needed to do to just ensure that they were able to show up, in the right frame of mind to play games and win games. And thankfully, while the view or the idea or the hope was that, okay, within the first 3 years, maybe we could win the league. That was what Amobi had sold. With where fortuitously, it turns out that in the very first attempt, first league attempt, first year of the partnership, Rangers won the league. So it's okay. So in the euphoria of the win, we ask ourselves, okay, so what next, right? This has come immediately. Of course, Rangers is now going to be playing continental football, representing Nigeria in the CAF Champions League. That has obvious implications for logistics and logistic costs. Whereas for the last year, any local to make reservations for grounds for training, maybe host teams might provide training facilities, but you must take certain things, and given the nature of you can't be naive on the continent. You can't go and shop and then they serve you food and water. You've got to take some provisions yourself so that nobody comes and suddenly the team develop stomach ache and can't play the game. So you've got to be smart about it. Your stadium also has to tick the box in terms of quality so that you can host your games. Because CAF has certain minimums. So that requires investments in in facilities to improve the quality. We saw what happened at the last Oriental Derby when Enyimba came to play Rangers in Enugu, and how there was the pitch invasion and all that, and both sides were fine, but clearly it's an infrastructure question. So some investments have to be made, around perimeter, fencing, the OB van, improving the quality of the VIP sitting and providing some proper boxes. And all of that, so that the experience is even better. So there is quite some work to be done, but I think it's been a very productive and very fruitful partnership in the very first year. It's also done some good for us in terms of brand recognition within Enugu State generally, where the brand is quite, it's become a very household name in the Southeast, and there is very positive affiliation with the brand.
Yes, this is basically, I just want to show the sort of raw emotions that sports evoke in people. And this was during
the Nations Cup.
The Nations Cup.
So the student hostel.
This is school hostel. This lady's going absolute bonkers. For the Super Eagles.
Yes.
If you could get this sort of emotions. The person, the African in London, in the US, they want to know what's going on. Do you understand? You'll be surprised, maybe even more than Nigerians.
Yeah.
So what we need to do is try and see how to fundamental to building the products that we're talking about is that you've got to have stars.
Right.
Because it's the stars that the fans follow.
You have to platform them.
Yeah, and you have to pay them to be stars. You will pay them real good money. It's not like you are doing them a favor. You're building your business. Do you understand? So these are the things that we need to bring into our sports space. But I think what the problem is right now is that everybody is waiting for the one successful case study or whatever before they all jump in. Do you understand? So on a final note, are you optimistic about what our sports industry, the future of our sports industry is?
Yes, I am quite optimistic. You know, like I said, there is something about the African and sports that is almost very naturally set up. So to that extent, we're quite optimistic, and I think you know, optimism is really the only thing we can hold on to, you know, and keep investing, because the talent is there. Harnessing it is important, and except, you know, we commit to this sort of initiatives and processes, we really can't give hope to those guys, and so we have to be there. And I think increasingly, you know, there are other friends of the firm who've seen us and said to us, guys, look, this was interesting, this was exciting, and we are then saying, look, why don't you also then consider joining and coming along, so that we can sustainable for everyone.
All right, thank you very much, Victor. Final question, yes or no answer. If somebody's watching now and they have a sports business idea, is AfriInvest open to listening, hearing them out?
Yes.
Okay. So ladies and viewers, we've come to the end of our program. It's been an enlightening session with Mr. Victor Ndukwa.
I love to dance. My dream is to be impactful to humanity, and dance is connecting me to that dream. So I don't see dancing as just movement of the body. I see dancing as an amazingly powerful tool. Dance is the oldest form of communication. Before we are able to speak, we move first. Dance can speak to us, dance can nurture us, dance can empower us, dance can make us fit and healthy, dance can make us happy, dance can reduce stress level, depression rates, dance can stop you from even committing suicide, because it's an art form of expression. And when you get to express, you are able to live. When I look at dance, it's just a cloak I can wear to connect to humanity, to be a better person. Like some people ask me, so if you know the dance, what do you want to do? I go do dance again. And I come from a family that only celebrates children because mommy is lawyer. We are like stifled in that pressure of what our family dictates that success is. And for me, you don't do that to a cafe. Don't say I can't be great as a shoemaker. I will prove to you that shoemaker, and in fact, I'm going to make shoe for Queen of England. I read book well, I love book well, and I dey pass. So it's not a second class option for me. So being great at it doesn't mean I'm the best at it, but I'll do the best with what I have, with what I know. So there has been a lot of trial and error, but there was more of trials that worked than errors that didn't. And most of my errors were things that I used to kind of like educate myself for what not to do next. I dance and people are happy because I dance with you and you are happy. So if you don't understand that it's a product, it's different. If you don't understand that it can be a service, it's different. It's up to me to make you understand that this thing you need it to. Money should never be your motivation because it hinders aspiration. It does. I see money as something that I can control. I want you, I learn from one another. we feel learning from each other belittles us. If I go somewhere now to go and learn from a younger dancer, the way he will carry it for head, the way he will talk about me in a very dishonorable manner, is what to make somebody that knows so much not want to go and learn from a younger person. I always want to impact. I don't like to see the bad in people. I always want to see the good in you. And the good in you, for me, translates at what God put in you. That is not you.
Welcome to this edition of Timeless Conversations. My guest today is a person, I don't want to say a young man. I believe when you say a young man, you are just saying know your space. So, but is a man I met about 15 years ago. It was a chance encounter. He's a very serious entrepreneur. He has a lot of energy, and if he loves anywhere, he loves the country. Nigeria. Alfred Okoro, you're welcome.
Thank you, sir.
Nice to see you.
Yes, sir.
You're looking all sharp, sharp, sharp. Well, welcome. I asked you to come on this conversation set because whenever we sit down to talk, the passion I see in you about development, about Nigeria, about getting things right, I feel should be shared with more people than just in our small talk session. So let's meet who Alfred Okoro is.
Wow, okay. That's a summary, right?
Yeah.
My name is Alfred Okoro, and was born and raised here, and luckily migrated to the States at 18, did my college, and came back in 2005 to start a business going into the broadcast media. Fast forward to that, which is when we met, and moved back in 2016 when I got married. And since then, still have this itch that I can't scratch that is bringing me back.
There's still that itch. The
Yes.
itch is called Nigeria.
Yes.
Why Nigeria?
It's home. I don't know how else to explain.
Nigeria, wherever you go. Okay, but as someone who has tasted, still want to come to Nigeria, don't people ask you, what do they do you?
Every day, my mom does, my wife does, and my kids are not grown. There is nothing that is not here. Absolutely not. The Nigerians here seem frustrated. Everybody wants to leave. And the moment they cross these waters, they excel. Both Yoruba, Igbo, Hausa, South, everybody in Nigeria. We've been ranked the most successful ethnic group in the United States. Why is it that we excel there, but not at home? Let's call it a home, not just a place that we find ourselves in.
You know, something that has been curious about you is that all the while that I've known you, I've never heard you say something like, let's go our separate ways.
No, I do not believe that. I completely believe we are better together. Better. I believe so. I will be one of those to tell you I do not believe this country was designed to succeed. But so what? This is the... So I
share with people the thought that what we need is a psychic orientation in Nigeria.
Preach what Nigeria?
Welcome back to Timeless Conversations. Alfred Okoro is my guest. Now, Alfred, you were saying something every graduate of a higher institution must undertake. What do you think of it?
The mindset behind it is great. The implementation, I believe, is flawed. Because what would you say that a corporate today gets out of that 1 year?